May God bless your day and your week as you join us for this deep dive. Imagine winning a landmark Supreme Court case for equal rights, like a victory that completely changes the legal landscape for an entire demographic.
Oh, a total game changer.
Right. But then, right as the confetti is settling, the government realizes your victory might, accidentally bankrupt an entire state.
Yeah, that kind of unintended systemic shockwave.
Exactly. And today, we are looking at a 3,000-year-old legal crisis that mirrors that exact situation. We're diving into the very last chapter of the Book of Numbers, chapter 36, and we'll be utilizing insights from the Holman and NAA study Bibles.
It's such a fascinating text.
It really is. And we are going to explore how hyper-specific question about inheritance, women's rights, and property law reveals these deep truths about community and divine promises.
Yeah, because it initially reads like dry administrative law. I mean, it forces us to zoom all the way in on legal minutia. But then you realize this tiny mechanism is actually the hinge upon which a massive theological door swings.
But before we open those court documents, we really have to establish the setting because, the timing of this dispute is absolutely everything.
Right, context is key here.
So picture the scene. The Israelites have been wandering the harsh desert for 40 agonizing years. An entire generation has passed away. And now they are finally camped on the plains of Moab.
Just sitting right across the Jordan River from Jericho.
Literally on the brink, on the very threshold of entering the Promised Land.
The anticipation must have been just suffocating. I mean, they can practically see the land they have been promised for centuries.
But they aren't in yet.
No, they're trapped in this holding pattern. They're preparing, organizing, and crucially, figuring out the rules for how a nomadic people are going to transform into a settled agrarian society once they cross that river.
So to understand the specific boundary crisis that erupts at the end of the book, we first have to look at an unintended consequence of a previous landmark legal decision.
A case regarding inheritance that had just been settled.
Right. A case that was celebrated.
Yeah. So earlier in the narrative, we meet the 5 daughters of a man named Zelophehad. Their names are Mala, Tirzah, Hoglah, Milcah, and Noah.
And their father had died in the wilderness, right?
Exactly. He died during the wanderings, and he had no sons. Now, in the ancient Near East, inheritance passed exclusively through the male line.
Which is just how things worked back then.
Yeah. So if there were no sons, the family's name, and more importantly, their allocation of land would essentially be wiped out entirely.
Which was a catastrophic outcome. I mean, your land wasn't just your wealth, it was your identity.
Your multi-generational survival.
So facing complete erasure, these 5 women do something totally unprecedented. They go straight to Moses and the leadership, and they argue their case.
They essentially say, why should our father's name be taken away just because he had no son? Give us property among our father's relatives.
And Moses actually takes it to God. And God says, the daughters of Zelophehad are right, so they win. They get the right to inherit their father's land.
Which stands as this incredible victory for women's rights in the ancient world. It acknowledges their dignity and their rightful claim to their family's legacy.
You read that earlier chapter and you think, great, case closed, justice served.
Right, time to celebrate.
But then we get to chapter 36. The family heads of the region of Gilead, these are descendants of Mashir from the tribe of Manasseh, they approach Moses with a massive but.
A really big but.
Yeah. They've been doing the math on this landmark ruling, and they are terrified.
Well, their concern is rooted in how the land is actually going to be distributed. I mean, the Israelites are divided into 12 tribes, and the promised land is going to be allocated among them by lot.
Right.
So the elders of Manasseh realize that these 5 women now legally own a significant chunk of their tribe's future permanent territory.
And their big question to Moses is, what happens if these landowning women marry men from other Israelite tribes? Okay, let's unpack this, because this is where the legal gears really start grinding against each other. It's like an employee winning a massive settlement of company stock, but management suddenly realizing there's no non-compete clause.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
Right. If she marries someone at a rival company, the rival gets all the voting shares. Oh, wait, weren't these ancient laws supposed to be airtight from the start?
You'd assume so. But in this patriarchal society, when a woman married, she became part of her husband's family.
Yeah.
Her assets effectively merged with his household.
And we really have to remember the fundamental, explain it like I'm 5 rule of real estate in ancient Israel. The Israelites didn't actually own the land.
No, God owned the land.
They were just tenants. The boundaries of the 12 tribes were divinely ordained. So the elders of Manasseh are looking at this and thinking, if Mala or Tirzah marries a guy from the tribe of Judah, our divinely ordained land goes with her to Judah.
Which just accelerates the timeline of the problem exponentially. The text points out that this mingling of assets, this intermingling, would permanently shrink the ancestral territory of Manasseh.
Just slowly bleeding away.
Slowly but surely. Through marital attrition over generations, the map of Israel would be completely redrawn. Some tribes would grow massively wealthy, and others might lose everything.
The boundaries God instituted would be meaningless. Now, a modern listener might be screaming at their phone right now thinking, wait, didn't the Israelites have a built-in reset button for this? The year of Jubilee?
Oh, the Jubilee, yeah.
Because every 50 years, lost land goes back to the original owner. So, problem solved, right?
You would think so. The year of Jubilee from Leviticus 25 is one of the most fascinating socioeconomic structures in the ancient world. It really was a massive reset button.
Right. If you fell on hard times, sold your land.
Or even sold yourself into servitude. In the 50th year, all debts were forgiven, slaves were freed, and all sold property automatically reverted back to its original tribal owner.
It prevented generational poverty, which meant no matter how disastrously you managed your finances, your grandchildren would still inherit the ancestral home.
Exactly.
So if this ultimate economic safety net exists, why are the tribal leaders genuinely panicking? Wouldn't the land just bounce back to Manasseh in year 50?
It wouldn't. And what's fascinating here is this strict legal mechanics of how marriage bypassed that safety net.
Yeah.
Our sources, the study notes, point out a crucial legal distinction.
Which is?
The Jubilee only applied to land that had been purchased or sold due to economic hardship. It dealt strictly with commercial transactions.
Wait, so the Jubilee, this ultimate divinely inspired economic reset, actually had a massive blind spot when it came to marital assets.
It just wasn't designed to govern the incorporation of households. I mean, in the ancient Near East, marriage wasn't just a union of two people.
Right, it was bringing families together.
It was the full absorption of one household into another. If land is sold to pay a debt, it's a temporary lease of the dirt. But in marriage, the dirt legally changes its DNA, so to speak. It belongs to the husband's tribe now.
Wow. So the Jubilee trumpet could sound in year 50, but the law would recognize that land as having been born into the new tribe.
Exactly. It bypassed the Jubilee entirely. The elders of Manasseh correctly identified that marriage was the one legal avenue where tribal territory could permanently bleed away.
Without breaking a single commandment.
Right. The entire distribution of the Promised Land could be unraveled perfectly legally.
Which makes me wonder, how does an airtight divine law just miss this?
Well, that assumption is exactly what this text challenges. It shows that the law given in the wilderness wasn't just this static monolith dropped from the sky.
Like it wasn't just carved in stone and that's it forever.
Right. It was a dynamic system, sort of like case law, actively engaging with the messy realities of human life. The initial ruling solved a real injustice, but solving one complex problem often creates an unforeseen variable.
You fix one leak and the water pressure blows out another pipe.
Exactly.
So these elders come to Moses, essentially filing an emergency injunction. They're saying, we aren't disputing the women's victory, but if you don't fix this loophole, our tribe is going to be dismantled piece by piece every time there's a wedding.
Since human legal frameworks, even the Jubilee couldn't fix this, a new legal precedent had to be established.
So Moses takes this appeal back to God, right?
It does, and he delivers a new mandate from the Lord to balance the scales. The ruling is that the daughters of Zelophehad and any Israelite woman who inherits land can marry anyone they please.
Okay.
But, provided they marry within the clan of their father's tribe, the inheritance absolutely must not pass from tribe to tribe.
And the text notes that the 5 daughters faithfully obeyed and they married their cousins on their father's side.
They did.
But here's where it gets really interesting, because reading this today, I have to push back. Didn't God just rule in their favor? By turning around and forcing them to marry within their specific clan, aren't we putting a giant asterisk on their victory? Should we view this as a restriction of their individual rights or as a necessary compromise to protect the heritage of the entire community?
It definitely rubs our modern sensibilities the wrong way. We prize individual autonomy above almost everything.
Right. You can marry who you want, but only from the zip code. It feels like a bait and switch.
It does feel that way to us.
Yeah.
But we have to evaluate this through their cultural paradigm. For the ancient Israelites, absolute unrestrained individualism just wasn't the goal.
It was about the community.
The ultimate goal was the survival and flourishing of the covenant community. If personal autonomy completely overrode the community's boundaries, the community itself would cease to exist.
And the tribe of Manasseh would literally disappear from the map.
Furthermore, notice what the ruling does not do. God doesn't revoke the women's right to inherit. He doesn't say, let's just give the land back to the uncles to keep it
Well,
simpler.
they still get the land.
The women keep the land. Their dignity remains intact. The ruling simply places a boundary around that right to ensure it doesn't accidentally destroy the wider tribe. It's a harmonization.
So they get their inheritance, but they also take on the responsibility of stewarding it for the good of their broader family. It transforms from my land to our land.
Yes, beautifully put.
And that brings us to the biggest question. To really understand why preventing the transfer of a few plots of land was such a big deal, we have to look at what the land actually represented right at this exact historical moment.
Because if you read this merely as a dry legal dispute about real estate, you miss the entire theological heartbeat of Numbers.
The NAA study notes emphasize this so well. They point out that keeping the land tied to the tribe is way more than a dry legal obligation. It is intrinsically tied to God's promise in Genesis 17, verse 8.
The promise to give Canaan as a perpetual property.
A perpetual property. So maintaining these borders isn't just civic pride. It's about fidelity to the covenant. If they just let the land slip away through loopholes, they are treating God's eternal promise like a cheap commodity.
They'd be saying the borders don't really matter.
But the borders are the promise.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this is the profound genius of how Numbers concludes. Think about what this book has been. It's been a long, painful chronicle of rebellion, complaining, and failure in the wilderness.
A lot of complaining.
So much complaining. The older generation failed to trust God, and they died in the desert. Now this new generation is stepping up. And how do they show they are finally ready?
By actually caring deeply about the specifics of the promise.
Exactly. This seemingly mundane legal dispute actually encapsulates the overarching theme of Numbers. It's a community learning fidelity to God's instructions so they can actually inherit his promises.
They aren't just asking for a broad blessing, they're sweating the logistics of how to maintain it.
The daughters possess the courage to demand justice. The elders possess the foresight to recognize a systemic flaw. And the system worked because they were unified in honoring the covenant.
Over their own convenience. And that leads to the very last lines of the book, which I just find so cinematic.
It's a great ending.
The book of Numbers ends right here. With this legal settlement, the Israelites are showing total obedience. And the very last word in the text is Jericho.
It just leaves you hanging on the edge of your seat. It transforms a chapter of administrative law into this breathtaking cliffhanger.
Jericho. It symbolizes this intense yearning. They are looking across the water at that fortified city. They've guarded the promise, they closed the loopholes, and now the conquest is finally about to begin.
And, this raises an important question for all of us about how we view our own systems. We so often separate the spiritual parts of our lives from the boring logistical parts.
Oh, absolutely. Theology is grand, administration is just paperwork.
Right. But this text argues that logistics are profoundly spiritual. How you legally protect your community, that is where your actual values are tested.
It's easy to say you believe in a grand promise. It is so much harder to sit down and do the tedious work of building a life that actually sustains it.
It requires everyone. The bold courage of the marginalized to speak up, and the wisdom of the leadership to see long-term consequences.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? I want to leave you with a final, provocative thought to mull over as you go about your week.
It's a challenging one.
When you look at the structures of our own modern lives, how do you balance our fierce desire for individual freedom with the need to preserve the legacy and the boundaries of our communities?
Yeah.
Are we building systems that genuinely protect our shared future? Or are we leaving loopholes that slowly, quietly erode our foundations? The land is right there, across the river. But how we prepare to cross over matters just as much as getting there. God blesses all the listeners.